Hello guys, this is your fanfic dojo and we are back with our new fanfic, which is what if Naruto and Anko were two assassins of Konoha part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Across the village in a compound far too large for one person sat a lone boy in a dead house on a vacant street. Uchiha Sasuke was fuming at what the dead last did to him this morning in the classroom. Not only had he taken his rightful attention away and ignored him, the boy also had the nerve to think he could outwit and defeat an Uchiha. Torture would be too kind for someone with such gall. No, he would be sure that something much worse was brought upon the insignificant worm that humiliated him today. No one humiliates an Uchiha and gets away with it, no one. Finishing his meal he went out to his training area and threw himself at the posts once again. It was the only thing he had to do anyway around here, but this night he seemed to have a renewed vigor. He wasn't going to chance having a weak moment ever again. No, the Dobi would not catch him off guard when next they met, he would make sure of that. The only desire he had was to awaken his Sharingan. Having that would ensure his victory over the blonde. Now all he had to do was pass some stupid test tomorrow. He hoped it would be a skills test so he wouldn't need to worry about his teammates. Hell, why did he even have a team anyway? The Dobi didn't have one yet. He, an Uchiha, was given a team and a sensei. At least he could agree with his sensei though. The famed Hatake Kakashi, the copy ninja, a man said to know over 1,000 jutsu. Yes, this man could help him go far. Dreaming of throwing high-ranked jutsu at his helpless brother was more than satisfying. Sure, it was all in his head, but it made him feel a little better at the time watching his imaginary battle with his brother while his brother begged for mercy and he gave the man none. It was these dreams that allowed him to fall asleep with an evil smile on his face. In another section of Konoha another boy was seething. Inuzuka Kiba sat at his family's diner table with bloodlust in his eyes. Not only did the dead last have the nerve to hurt him in front of the whole class, but he also took a girl that should only belong to the alpha male, something he had proven over the years at the academy that Naruto was definitely not. Then as if that wasn't enough, the blonde attacked him right when he was about to make his claim on Hinata. Right in front of a crowd of villagers he had been humiliated yet again yet couldn't do a thing to retaliate as the air left his lungs. His mood was clearly evident in his face and anyone could have read him like a book as he stabbed his food with malice. What's wrong, mutt? Someone step on your tail, or catch you chasing it maybe. Hana couldn't help but poke fun at her little brother. It was one of her favorite pastimes when she had nothing else to do. Maybe we should get you a new chew toy to take your frustrations out on. Sume for her part was trying not to laugh as Hana poked the wasp's nest that was her brother. She knew he had a hot head and like Hana couldn't resist the urge to rouse him every now and then. This time though it seemed to have been something extraordinarily bad as he actually growled and glared at his sister. Something an underdog shouldn't ever be doing to his superiors. Careful, mutt. Those eyes are going to get you hurt one day. Hana narrowed her own eyes at him, daring him to backtalk her so she could remind him that he wasn't anywhere near being top dog. Not wanting her dining room to be torn to shreds, again, Sume stepped in. Both of you settle down. Now, Kiba, what got you so pissed? Your answer better be good because I won't tolerate insolence nor ignorance in this house. He couldn't hold it in anymore and turned his glare to his mother and shouted a bit louder than he should have. It was that damn Uzumaki bastard. He took my mate from me and humiliated me in front of the class, then did it again in a public street. I swear I will make him pay for his actions. I won't allow someone to steal a mate from me and get away with it. Taking an Inuzuka's mate was something serious, but his words didn't sit right with either of them. They both knew Kiba was rash, easily provoked and usually was the first to throw a punch. Sume was the first to reply. Tell me, Kiba, who was your mate? It was a simple question to answer, but she suddenly saw her son stiffen and knew that he'd acted before he thought today. Hyuga Hinata. Was one of my classmates. I want her and I will have her. He started off a bit reserved but finished with renewed fury when he recalled how close he had been to accomplishing his goal this afternoon. It had been so easy to corner her in front of that ramen stand. It was like she was inviting him to take her. Hyuga Hinata, as in the heiress of the Hyuga clan. Are you insane or just stupid? How could you even consider that she could be your mate? The heir of a clan is going to be wed to someone of their choosing, not some fresh out of the academy mutt. I have seen this Hinata around town and I can tell that she is not one to make the first move. I could smell the fear and anxiety rolling off her whenever she saw someone looking at her. Tell me, little brother, just how many of your advances has she accepted, willingly? Busted. I was still getting her to warm up to me, but she was so close today I could feel it. I tried to kiss her but that damn Uzumaki got in the way and even had the nerve to call her his date. Did she allow you to try to kiss her or did she try to push you away? Sum narrowed her eyes again at her son. She was allowing me to, after a few minutes. You stupid mutt. She isn't that strong and you know it. She was probably letting you close because she was losing her strength. I swear to Kami if you ever try that with any woman while I am near I will neuter you myself. Hannah was furious. Her brother, her own flesh and blood, tried to force himself on someone. She felt ashamed to know him. Sum though was far too angry with her son. She spoke in a voice that was dangerously even and thick with malice as she closed her eyes, refusing to even look at her son. Kiba, you have shamed our clan by your actions this day. First, you tell us that someone stole your mate when she had no desire to be with you in the first place. Then you tell us that you tried to force yourself on her. Not only that, but you apparently got into a fight with the Uzumaki boy not once but twice, and lost both times. You've taken our name and rubbed it into the dirt. Go to your den and I don't want to see your face until I decide a fitting punishment. Kiba shivered as he heard the dangerous undertone of his mother's voice. He couldn't see what he did wrong. Sure, he could see how he may have gone a little overboard when he pushed Hinata, but why be angry at the fights? He was a ninja after all and ninjas are supposed to fight. Especially when the one they were fighting deserved to be slammed into the ground. He knew all of this instinctively, but he wasn't about to go against his mother when she was like this. Slowly, making sure not to make any aggressive movements, he stood and walked out of the room. This made the third time that day that he'd been humiliated because of Naruto. First in the class, then in the street, now in his own home. He would have to pay. It was just a matter of how. Sitting in her room, Hyuga Hinata was still in a daze. Her day had been amazing. Sure, she didn't get put on a team with her Naruto-kun, but what did that matter anymore? He asked her out this morning and defended her twice before they even started their date. Sure, she had to deal with Kiba's advances while she was waiting, but seeing how furious Naruto was when he found out what Kiba was attempting was worth it. After that, he had taken her to a real restaurant. She thought they were just going to eat at Ichiraku's since Naruto seemed addicted to the place. She didn't mind that he'd chosen a booth near the back. She would have been far too nervous had the whole restaurant been able to see them. It made for a more romantic setting anyway, and she was more than content with that. The meal itself was fine. Nothing too impressive, but it also wasn't the highest quality restaurant. Not that she expected a 5-star meal on their first real date. There was of course a limit to just how far her dreams could come true. That was fine by her though, having Naruto acknowledge her was more than enough. She was just happy that she managed to not make a complete fool of herself tonight or worse, faint. Thinking back to the boy, she couldn't help but smile. It was well past time that he show his true abilities. Yes, she had an idea of how good he was. You don't stalk someone without finding out about one or two of their secrets. Even for as much as he had unintentionally shown her, she was still surprised at a few of his tricks. For one, she hadn't known he could use a sword, nor did she know he could camouflage so well. She knew he was fast, but the speed he showed in class was something she hadn't witnessed. Then there was the clone. She knew it wasn't a normal clone, and her suspicions were proven correct nearly instantaneously when she activated her Byakugan. The clone had a chakra system running through it, something a regular Bunshin did not have. Then there was how long it had taken the clone to disperse, not to mention that it actually took the kunai. An attack on a normal Bunshin would have the kunai pass right through. As the day went on, she had been more and more confused and elated with Naruto's actions. He had finally dropped the mask of idiocy, and now everyone was in for the shock of their lives. Just the fact that the Hokage felt he was capable enough to be a solo team with no sensei spoke volumes of his abilities. It was just a shame that no one else seemed to realize that fact. It didn't matter anymore though. She had finally gotten what she wanted, and she was going to make sure she kept it. Slipping into her bed, she turned in a bit earlier than normal. Tomorrow was another genin test, and she would need to be ready for it. They hadn't been told they had to take another test after graduation, but she was determined not to fail. After all, how could she look weak now that her life seemed to finally be changing? It was time for her to show that she was indeed a Hyuga. The next morning, newly accepted ninja were waking up earlier than normal all around the village. Today was their genin acceptance tests. All of them had been given the same instructions of not eating breakfast and a rather early meeting at their respective training ground. All save one. Naruto had been given the lowdown on the tests as Hinata, and he talked over dinner the night before. Going over it in his head, plus his conversation with the Hokage the day before, it was easy for him to come to the solution for the test even though he didn't know the specifics. More than likely it would be a test on teamwork, but since it's a ninja test, it wouldn't be as cut and dry as that. No, it would have something to it: contention, something to force them to not want to work together. Then there was the rule to not eat before the test. That in and of itself was suspicious. When he told Hinata this, she reluctantly agreed. Then when he told her that if she planned on not eating breakfast anyway, then she should make up for it by eating more tonight. She had blushed rather cutely as he shoveled some of his own food onto her plate. Then sat there as she ate all she could. He was sure she wouldn't die from hunger, or be distracted too much when it came time for her test. He would feel bad after all if she didn't pass. He already felt bad enough that he didn't have to take a test like that and instead dove right into missions. Just like he was going to do today. It was still dark out when he woke up, allowing him to sneak to his hideaway unnoticed. After setting up his army of clones and instructing them on what to do for the day, he made his way to Ichiraku's for a quick breakfast. He didn't have to worry about the time. This being a ninja village, it was well known among the places that sold breakfast that there were customers to be had early in the day and late at night. Most restaurant owners had it easy as they simply hired people who worked in shifts. Others, like the Ichirakus, had it a little tougher as they only had 2 employees. They managed though by having Tuki get up early and work the breakfast crowd while Ayame stayed up late and handled the late night crowd. After a quick bowl of miso ramen, Naruto was off to the mission hall. The sun was just cresting the horizon as he sat on a bench outside the doors waiting for the on-duty shinobi to come and open up. His goal today was not only to do more missions than his first day, but to do the most laborious of them himself. He had just taken his seals up a notch and would need to get used to them. This was best done through hard work, though just walking around when he would adjust them was work in itself. It only took a few minutes for the on-duty shinobi to show, surprising both of them. Naruto was surprised that it was none other than his academy sensei, Iruka. Iruka, on the other hand, being still half asleep, was just surprised to see anyone at the mission hall this early. Most people waited until the afternoon to pick up missions unless told otherwise, but for anyone to show up before the doors were actually open was a bit overzealous even for the most ambitious of ninja. Hey Iruka-sensei. Naruto. What are you doing here so early? Huh, doesn't the mission hall open this early? Well, yeah, but why not wait until later like everyone else? If I wait till everyone else gets their missions, there might not be any left for me. Besides, people who procrastinate tend to make it a habit, and bad habits like that are not a good thing to have for a shinobi. Iruka was torn. Here his own student was worried about a lack of D-rank missions, which there was a never-ending pile of. There was a whole closet in the mission room just for them and another for C ranks. Then looking down on bad habits, well, he couldn't berate the boy on his orange jumpsuit anymore, but he could think of a few ninja that should take up his perspective. Particularly a certain masked Jonin. Blinking at the boy, he just nodded his head and unlocked the door, letting them both in. So what kind of mission do you want to do today? Since you are the first here, you pretty much get the pick of the bunch. You could just take a really quick one and then have the rest of the day to yourself. I'm sure there are plenty of them. Naruto looked at his former sensei in confusion. Nay sensei, I'm doing missions today. I need tough ones too. Definitely something physically demanding. Anything else is fine too, but I need at least one that will give me a good physical workout. At least one. Yeah, as in I am going to be doing more than one mission today. Here was the usually lazy boy, and former dead last of the academy, being an overachiever. Sure, the Sandame had told Iruka that the Naruto he knew was nothing more than an act, but to see it personally was still a bit of a shock. His eagerness to work almost overshadowed his performance in the classroom yesterday. Well, if that's what you want, how many are you planning on doing today exactly? He wasn't too sure about giving one person multiple missions, but it wasn't unheard of, so he'd just go with it. D ranks were easy enough to do 2 or 3 if given a full day. Well, I guess I'll take a dozen or so for this morning. I'll come back to turn them in and get more after lunch then, unless I finish them sooner. It only took me a few hours to do 11 yesterday, so a dozen in 5 hours should be more than enough time. Iruka had just opened the door to the mission hall as Naruto said this. As his hand went limp, the door swung open to bang against the wall. Nay, Iruka-sensei, you alright? In a daze, the Chunin made his way through the hall, collecting scrolls and setting them up before sitting down behind the table and staring at the boy. Iruka-sensei. Huh. Oh, well, go through the D ranks until you find what you want and just let me see them before you go. His brain was trying to work in overdrive while at the same time resisting the urge to stall completely. A few missions a day was normally the max for any ninja's patience, especially for D ranks. Now here was Naruto. Out of all the people Iruka knew, this boy had the least patience of them all. The hyperactive blonde could hardly sit still enough in class to listen to a full sentence, yet here he was saying he was dwarfing the usually number of missions a ninja did during the day. Say Naruto, I'm not going to tell you that you can't do so many missions, but I would like to know why you want to. Naruto glanced up from the pile of scrolls before turning his attention back. Iruka-sensei, I currently am given an allowance by Hokage Gigi to live on, as well as a donated apartment. I'm sure you know about my past and you obviously know what's inside me, so just imagine what happens when angry drunk villagers are given the whereabouts of the main target of their hate. If nothing else, I want to make enough to live in a place of my choosing. Because the apartment is donated, I am not allowed to do any custom modifications to it, but if I get my own place I can protect it properly. It's not that I care about my possessions being torn up or crushed, but even though they are the cheaper of my possessions, it still gets rather old having to replace them so often. It's hard enough for me to save money without having to buy new furniture all of the time, no matter how cheap. Naruto took a moment to look over a mission before adding it to the growing stack. I want to save as quickly as possible to get out of that dump and into a place where I don't have to worry about break-ins every night. The more missions I do, and the faster I do them, the sooner I will get some peace for myself. Uruka lowered his head a bit at the revelation. It wasn't that long ago that he had been one of the people to abuse Naruto. Though he never physically touched the boy, he couldn't say he was the nicest person to him either. He had been part of crowds that had chased him from stores and had helped in 1 or 2 break-ins. He wasn't sure if Naruto knew about those, but it didn't matter because he himself knew he had done it. After Naruto started the academy though, Iruka got a good look at the boy's never-give-up attitude and couldn't help but admire him. Container or not, he resolved to be a bit nicer to the boy. After that, it had all been quite the ride as the years passed, and he soon found himself to actually be warming up the Naruto and vice versa. Though he would still be targeted for some pranks, they were never nearly as bad as other teachers got. Sighing to himself, he was jerked out of his thoughts as Naruto laid out a bunch of scrolls on the desk in front him. Looking from the scrolls to Naruto, he resigned himself to his duties. Going over each scroll, he was surprised at the variety. There were, as he said there would be, a couple physically demanding missions. Removing rocks from a field and cutting firewood among them. Then there were just day-to-day tasks. Weeding gardens, walking dogs, catching Tora. The only thing they really had in common was that they were all mid to high-paying D ranks. Some of them could hold off a day or two, so if he couldn't do them all, it wasn't going to be too bad as long as he got the important ones out of the way. After he finished writing them down in the log along with who they were being done by, he looked back up at Naruto. Well, I have everything I need. Good luck, and don't worry too much if you don't finish them right away. The important ones are catching Tora and walking the dogs. The rest can wait a day if needs be. To his surprise, Naruto just scoffed at him as he picked up the pile of scrolls and headed out the door. Outside, Naruto, like yesterday, created a small army of clones. As he handed out assignments, they left to get their respective jobs done. When all but one assignment was left, he called over the remaining clones. This would be his second mission that he himself would be on, and oh, what an exciting mission he saved for himself. Clearing a field of rocks, oh joy. Well, let's get it done. He headed off to the farm, which was just outside the north wall of the village. Arriving in only a few minutes, he saw the farmer already waiting with a variety of tools. Hello, sir. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I am here for the mission of clearing out the rocks. Naruto took a glance at the field and immediately realized just how physical of a task he'd chosen for himself. He no longer wondered why this was one of the higher-paying D ranks. Most likely the only thing that kept it from being a low C rank was its close proximity to the village. The farmer was a bit surprised to see a group of identical people walk up to him, but shrugged it off. Ninja had many tricks, so he just chalked it up as one he hadn't seen yet. Hey sonnies. I just moved in here recently, and while I can farm well enough, clearing out a neglected field is a bit beyond my abilities. Got you picks, shovels and a couple wheelbarrows for the job. You can just pile 'em at the edges of the field. If you're feeling really ambitious, you can start the makings of a wall too. Couldn't hurt none for me, that's for sure. Sounds like just what I was after. Don't worry, old man, by lunch you won't recognize the place. Crossing his fingers, he created more clones, much to the old farmer's surprise, and took to the fields with tools in hand. He wasn't so cocky to think that he'd be able to finish in his time frame without the extra hands. He put all his effort into the job though, and was soon clearing out barrows full of rocks in no time, while the Bunshin carted them away to form a low wall around the slightly overgrown edge of the field. When he noticed the field was being slowly reclaimed by the wilderness, he assigned a few more clones to re-establish the borders before the wall would have a chance to make it more difficult. For his part, the old farmer stayed more or less out of the way, only making himself known when he wanted a space in the wall or to complement the speed that the young ninjas worked at. Seeing him compliment various clones was good for a laugh since the farmer had no way of knowing which one was the original, and judging by how he talked to each he probably didn't know that any of them weren't real. Work was progressing quickly as the small army moved from one end of the field to the other. It wasn't until they were nearing the far end of the field that the day started to get interesting. Clang! Both the farmer and Naruto looked at the clone with the pickaxe, who in turn was staring at the ground a bit startled. Boss, I think I found something. Both of them walked over to the clone, who was now joined by a few others with shovels clearing away the dirt. As more and more earth was moved out of the way, a trap door was brought into view. The farmer was a bit confused as to why someone would put a door in the middle of a field and just assumed that it was a tornado shelter or an old well. Naruto, on the other hand, knew exactly what it was by the symbols on the door, as well as what they might find in it. The door was of the same design as the one in his own secret shelter, and if that was indeed the case, then what was inside would not be pleasant. Sir, I suggest for your sake you let me go in first. You may not even want to go in at all. The farmer stood by confused as the boy told one of the others to go alert the Hokage of what they found. Had it been a few years ago he wouldn't have taken that measure, but he was a ninja now and it was his duty to bring any information of any possible threats to the attention of the proper authorities. Meanwhile, he began the process of breaking the lock on the door. He was lucky in the one he found initially that it had seemed to be abandoned in haste with the door left unlocked. He had kept the lock out of fascination and tinkered with it when he found a book on lockpicking. If this lock was anything like the others, then he would be able to pick it as well, but it would take a few minutes. After hearing the telltale click of the pins settling in place, he had the farmer step back as he also kept a distance. Anyone who was willing to hide such a place definitely had secrets to keep. If this was anything like his place had been, they would be rather dark secrets at that. Signaling the clone near the door, who in turn flung the door open and was promptly dispelled as a jet of flame enveloped it. The farmer fell on his ass, completely caught off guard by the trap, while Naruto stood by, gazing at the now open door. Signaling a few more clones to enter the hole, he waited. The only sign that anything was going on inside were the small jerking motions that played on his eyebrows every so often. Whoever hid this here didn't want it to be found. After another half hour of waiting, Naruto was given the okay as the last clone dispelled itself after opening the last door inside. Just as he was walking towards the hole, he felt a presence as the Hokage himself fell into step beside him, holding an arm out, causing Naruto to stop. As four Anbu settled in around them, Sarutobi gave his warning. Naruto, don't get too close, you can never tell what may be in one of these holes. I know who put this here and he was nothing if not cautious. Don't worry, Gigi. I already explored it with my clones. They disarmed or triggered the traps already. There wasn't any poison gas, so while you may have to be careful to not step on some Senbon stuck in the path, it is pretty much clear. Sarutobi nodded at the boy while lowering his arm to allow him to continue on. Before he did though, Naruto turned back towards the farmer. Old man, you should stay here. I'll leave a few more clones to finish the field, but under here is ninja business. I wouldn't want you to get hurt by accident. Don't worry about me, boy, you had me convinced after opening the door. You just make sure that I'm not going to suddenly be ready for a cannibal's feast when I go to plow my fields. Giving a nod at the farmer and making a few more clones to replace those that were lost, he took point as the Hokage followed him into the darkness, while the Anbu, at a signal from their leader, took up positions around the entrance to keep guard. Much like his place in town, it started as a long tunnel. Unlike his, though, this one had offshoots and more than a single door. It would seem that whoever made his had a lot more time to form one outside the village without anyone knowing than hiding one under the village itself. Going door to door gave them both a better understanding at what this place was for, and it wasn't the most pleasant of discoveries. As they delved deeper, the contents got more and more disturbing. Glass jars with body parts floating in liquid were lined up on shelves, Metal caskets held preserved bodies. Areas that looked like operating rooms were covered in blood, as were rooms with chains and racks, some with decaying bodies still on them. To the Hokage, this was one of the more disturbing of his old students' laboratories. They had discovered many over the years since he left Konoha, but none nearly as large as this one. And the experiments they saw, things like this should only be seen in wartime if they should be seen at all. It was then that he remembered the boy that was leading him around. Naruto, if you don't feel comfortable with this, I understand, and you may go back outside. This isn't something you would normally have to deal with at your age. Gigi-san, you already know about my trips into Training Ground 44. What I haven't told you is that I stumbled upon a lair like this in the village when I was younger as well. It isn't as large as this one, but it still held some of the items we have seen here. Bodies, jars, blood. I won't lie, it is disturbing, but it's nothing I haven't seen before. At the time I didn't know that I should have reported what I found, so I just cleaned it out and set up my own storage in there. It is well hidden, and at the moment only I can enter it. I took everything I found that I didn't see a use for and took it far into the woods outside the village and buried it. I know what you're going to ask. No, I didn't keep any of the experimental items. Just weapons and scrolls. I locked away any scrolls dealing with the experiments that I found, and you can have it when we get back from here. You can also enter my place, but I ask that you not take it away from me. It is the only place that me and my possessions are truly safe around the village. Sarutobi was only slightly shocked. He knew Naruto had a hidden place for himself, but to learn that it was one of his students' lairs and that he had cleaned it out and sealed it up himself was a bit of a shock. Now the boy walked next to him, not showing a hint of emotion at what they had seen so far, save for his face losing some color. It pained him to know that the boy he'd sworn to protect was subjected to such discrimination for something he couldn't control. His biggest regret was that due to his duties as Hokage, he didn't have time to enforce his own laws regarding the boy. So while he got reports on how the boy was treated, and tried time and time again to get people who made the reports to give names of offenders, those were easily worked around by people then sending the reports anonymously. Then there wasn't a single thing he could do. Again he was brought out of his musings as Naruto addressed him. Gigi-san, if you need to attend to your duties, I will stay and catalog what's here and report back to you when I'm done. Normally he would classify this as an A or S rank mission and put trusted shinobi on it, but Naruto had already seen enough of it, not to mention finding it, opening it and combing it for traps, which saved them a lot of time. Weighing his resources and the boy's skills, or rather what he knew of the boy's skills, he found himself at a crossroads. On one hand, he could allow Naruto to oversee the investigation of the lair. On the other, he didn't want to subject the boy to more than he needed to experience. Yet he had already experienced his own hideaway and most of this one, and showed more resolve than most of his best ninja would have after seeing such things. He sighed while turning to Naruto. If you believe you can handle this investigation, I will let you do so. Just be sure to catalog everything you find, no matter how insignificant it may seem. I will keep 2 of the Anbu posted outside while you work, and I will see if Anko or Ibiki are available to go over the bodies. If they are too busy, I will send over a few of the medical staff. Leading the way back out, he gave Naruto an apologetic pat on the shoulder while signaling for 2 Anbu to stay. With a last look at the boy and a nod of his head, Sarutobi left him to his orders. Naruto looked at the farmer who had walked back over after seeing the 2 emerge and the Hokage leave. So what's the damage, boy? My new property isn't going to blow up or sink into the ground anytime soon, is it? No, sir, but we will need some time here before we can allow you to enter the area. If you even want to use it after seeing what we will be taking out of it. Letting the statement hang, he created another small army of clones and sent them off to get the supplies he needed. When he told one group to get body bags from the morgue, the farmer paled and decided he would make himself scarce for the remainder of the operation. Naruto gave a small, Dark chuckle at that which confused the two Anbu guards. What's up, boy? For the job you have ahead of you, I would start questioning my sanity if I started laughing before I did it. I'm just trying to figure out which is more amusing. The fact that I've done this before and didn't consider it important, or that most of the village would have liked to see me pried out of one of those coffins inside. With that grim announcement, he descended back into the dark tunnel, not bothering to look at the horrified reactions of the two guards. It took the better part of 2 hours, but he had finished cataloging the contents of the lair. There were the rooms that he and Sarutobi had seen already, but that was only the tip of the treasures inside. Deeper in, he found living quarters that were pretty bare, a small kitchen, and a library. The biggest stockpile, though, was the large room of weapons at the far end of the complex. It was easily twice as large as any other room in the tunnel system and held racks of all the weapons he could identify as well as many he couldn't. Everything along with their counts were carefully catalogued on scrolls labeled with numbers. Those numbers in represented areas on another scroll which included a map of the lair, with corresponding numbers showing which scroll matched to which room. As he put the finishing touches on the map scroll and sealed the numbered catalogs in it, 2 thuds were heard at the entrance of the lair. He made his way back to see Konoha's 2 top interrogators looking around at the various doors they could see, looking as though they were trying to decide where to start. As the sound of his feet hitting the floor reached their ears, 2 heads snapped to his direction. Stop! Who are you and what business do you have down here? Was Anko's reply as she took a battle stance when she noticed he didn't stop. Oh, for crying out loud. Didn't anyone tell you'd I'd be down here already? He watched their eyes grow wide as he stepped into the light that spilled through the doorway. What business does a genin have down here? This area is off limits to anyone other than the interrogation squad, medical teams, Anbu and the Hokage himself. Leave now or we will be forced to take you into custody. Ibiki was an imposing figure to most people in the village alone, but with Anko beside him the intimidation factor rose exponentially. Apparently the most that they intimidated did not include the boy before them as he stood there waiting for his turn to talk. If you are done screwing around, we have work to do. This is my mission just as much as it is yours. And if I might add, it took you long enough to get here. I mean, come on, 2 hours. I had enough time to map this place out, catalog the contents and seal my findings plus certain items of importance in my scroll here before you 2 even showed up. What kind of special squad reacts so slow? Now come on, we'll start in the room I like to call the playpen. The way he emphasized the last 2 words, combined with the smile on his face, was enough to send a shiver through both of the Jonin's spines. Listen kid, that's real funny and all, but we have a job to do here and we don't need you getting in. Naruto scowled at them before snarling. No, you listen. I have been through this place room by room recording everything I found. I've been down here for over 2 hours with the stench of decaying bodies in the air. This isn't the most pleasant morning I've had in my life, and even though it's far from the worst, that doesn't make me want to spend the rest of the day down here. Now follow me and do your preliminary investigation so I can go home, take a shower and eat some lunch, cause damn if I haven't worked up an appetite. Naruto glared at them before stomping away into the darkness, forcing them to follow if they wanted to say anything more. Just who the hell is that kid? Anko looked at Ibiki for a little help, but was only met with a pale face as the man stood looking at where the boy had been. Ibiki had just realized who the kid was and was both shocked and deeply disturbed with the way the blonde acted. Just what the hell did we do to him? The statement earned a curious glance from Anko, but Ibiki shook it off as he started after the boy. He is the one Hokage-sama assigned to this. I have no doubt. What worries me is that something that made Hokage-sama pale doesn't seem to be affecting the boy at all. Whatever we find in here, it would seem that it is something he is accustomed to. We will give him the mission scroll and get what we will need from him, then send him on his way. Even a person so used to death would take a reprieve from it when possible. Anko simply nodded before following. They caught up to Naruto as they found him leaning nonchalantly in an open doorway as he welcomed them with a dead voice. Welcome to the playpen. This is where the fun begins, it would seem. He motioned for them to follow him into the room, and once they did, they almost lost the contents of their stomachs. Seeing them grow pale quickly, Naruto couldn't help a little jab. What? You think this is bad? Wait till you see the storage room or the lab. He chuckled a little as he led the way to the middle of the room as he droned on. From what I could tell upon initial inspection, this is where the fresh test subjects were brought to try out formulas and techniques. To your left you will see the hanging gardens. A beautiful arrangement of mold-covered bodies that are slowly decomposing. The odd part is that they won't break down into their basic elements but rather form up the structure of the mold itself. From the trough on the floor I would suspect that as the mold grows it breaks off and is collected to be used in other experiments or as ingredients. Good luck trying to classify the stuff. That isn't my field. To your right are the pin art tables. My guess is that whoever worked here liked to test people's pain tolerance. You'll notice the various senbon, pins, spikes and other toys spread around. I believe it would be safe to assume that their host went for length of time over quantity of wounds on the majority. Finally, ahead of you is the merry-go-round. A round, spinnable, sectioned, cage-like structure that held test subjects that weren't dead or dying yet. I'm guessing that was for both ease of selection as well as mental torture from watching as those around you got picked out and wondering when it would be your turn. I kind of pity them yet envy them. While they didn't have a choice on whether or not to die, they also didn't have to endure the pains of this in many other rooms. Both Jonan looked around, both amused his method of describing the scene and horrified that it came with such ease out of a child. Tell me, Gaki, how can you talk so easily about this? Anko glared at him with hard eyes. Sure, she could have cracked jokes about this all day, but there was something in his eyes that told her he didn't enjoy it as much as he let on. That is for me to know. Now let's move on, we have more rooms to cover. He led them to the storage room which housed all the metal caskets that held preserved corpses. Then they went to the lab where he again poked fun by calling it the freak show. It was a complete house of horrors as they went from room to room, seeing just how deep the previous occupants' madness went as well as just how dark their guide's humor was. It seemed that no one was spared from the man's cruelty as they came upon once healthy adults as well as elderly, teens, children, animals and even unborn fetus. It was sickening, and the one taking it the worst was Anko. After all, she had at one point been the man's apprentice. Thankfully for her, he had never shown her his darker side until the end, but by then it was already far too late. Naruto brought out a small scroll as he stepped out of the last room on his tour. He handed the scroll to Ibiki, who looked at him in confusion. That should be everything. The scroll I gave you shows a map of the place so you won't get lost. It's all labeled so it should be easy to make your way around. Ibiki unfurled the scroll and nodded his head before handing a scroll to Naruto, who simply stood there waiting for the explanation that was sure to come. That is your mission scroll, which is already signed by the Hokage. Congratulations on your first S-rank mission. Understand though that you are not to let any information of what you've seen here slip to anyone outside of us and the Hokage. That is part of the trust in accepting this mission and receiving the pay for it. You have been a great help, Naruto-san. Ibiki bowed with Anko glancing at him before following his lead. Naruto scoffed at them. I don't need people bowing to me whenever I finish a mission like this. Save it for when it has real meaning. Just to give you a heads up though. You will find items missing throughout the lair. I have them sealed in the scroll that I'll be handing to Gigi-san personally, so don't think too much of it. Of the rooms on the map that I didn't show you are the living and cooking areas, the library and the armory. The later two have all of their contents sealed up and with me in the same scroll, as I'm sure Gigi-san will want them examined and possibly put into our own stores. Also in a little while some clones will be here with crates and body bags for your use. If you need anything else brought, don't hesitate to ask them to run errands. Just make sure to ask before they dispel, as they don't always have the patience to sit around. Nodding, Ibiki wanted one last word. One more question before you leave, Naruto-san. How are you not affected by what you've seen here? Naruto's eyes clouded slightly before refocusing on the two in front of him. He took in the calculating glare of the man and the eager, nearly hopping, actions of the woman. He settled his eyes on the man again before speaking. Everything in the world is relative. We judge how cold it is by the coldest we can remember feeling, the same goes for heat. We judge pain by the worst pain we've felt, the same goes for pleasure. We judge every feeling we have based on the worst or best of that feeling we've ever encountered. I am unaffected by the sights here because I have seen worse. I can make jokes about the obvious pain these people went through because I have felt worse. I can relate to the smiles of contentment that got frozen on their faces upon death because I have wished for the same release, but was never granted it. Do not envy me because I can deal with what is here. Do not pity me either because I don't care for it. Just pray that you never have to go through the same, and live. With that, he turned on his heel, leaving two speechless bodies staring blankly at his back. He had to squint as the light hit his face. He had been in the darkened tunnel so long that his eyes would need time to adjust. Glancing around, he saw a few of his clones returning already with the body bags, and stood to the side to let them pass. He nodded to the two Anbu as he walked past them and looked at the newly cleared field around him. All of his clones had dispersed long ago, letting him know of their success. Since he had no more work to do here, he headed towards the farmer's house to get his mission scroll signed and be on his way. Walking up to the front door, he knocked and waited as footsteps from inside came closer. As soon as the farmer opened the door, Naruto saw him gag. He would definitely need a shower before he went anywhere. Dang boy, I don't even want to know what you got into down there. Just let me know what you need and I'll send you on your way. No offense meant, but you smell more ripe than a month-old pile of manure on a hot summer day. Naruto couldn't stop the grin that spread across his face as he scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. Sorry sir, but sometimes we get a little dirty. If I can just get you to sign this scroll, I'll be on my way. He pulled out the mission scroll and handed it to the farmer, who in turn signed it quickly and handed it back as he gave a quick farewell and closed the door. Now to get home for a shower. Then off to Hokage Gigi to hand in this mission before I give Iruka-sensei a nice surprise. Naruto took off for the village gate, pointing a passing medical team on their way to the farm towards their destination, confusing them greatly that a genin would know where they were headed. Ah, Naruto-kun, I didn't expect you here so soon, the Hokage said with a mild blush. Naruto cocked an eyebrow at the old man's unease. Clearly. So I trust everything went well on your mission. As well as a mission can go when you're in a dark tunnel surrounded by dead decaying bodies and a madman's experiments, I suppose. He tossed the mission scroll and the storage scroll to the Hokage, who caught both easily. Knowing what the mission scroll said already, he opened it just enough to write his signature before storing it in a safe behind him. Turning back to his desk, he addressed the storage scroll and began to examine the map Naruto drew on its surface, scowling a bit. Naruto, I'm glad that you drew such a detailed map, but it doesn't really help us much. Naruto sighed at once again being underestimated. Oji-san, please don't make me explain it. Quote. Seeing the confused look on the Kage's face, he sighed before walking up to the desk and channeling chakra into one of the seals, allowing a scroll to pop out. Sarutobi scratched the back of his head and let out an embarrassed laugh, while Naruto just rolled his eyes and returned to his earlier position, waiting patiently while Sarutobi read through a few of the scrolls, eyebrows raising almost as often as scowls crossed his face while more information was revealed him. When he was nearing the end of the third scroll, Naruto decided to explain the other items he stored in the scroll. Oji-san, before you get too far, and I fall asleep, I just want to point out two important things I sealed in there. Pointing out the seals off to the side, he explained each one. This one holds a scroll that contains the lair's armory, and this one contains the library. I figured you would want to look through them. There could be important information in the library, and the weapons could restock our own armory a bit. Channeling chakra into the two seals, he indeed found scrolls labeled armory and library. Opening the armory one first, he was surprised to see how organized it was. Weapons were arranged by type and size with descriptions and quantities clearly written. Now curious, he set the armory scroll aside and opened the library scroll. Inside it began with an alphabetical listing of books followed by categories of jutsu scrolls. All arranged by type, rank and name. Rolling up the two scrolls, he set them aside and looked at Naruto with a gleaming smile. Taking out a sheet of paper, he wrote a few things down on it before signing and handing it over to Naruto, who looked down at it and read to himself. S rank mission completion form. This paper certifies the completion of a S rank mission by Uzumaki Naruto, as certified by Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage. There was also a small note at the bottom. Bonus for going above and beyond the expectations of the mission. Naruto once again cocked an eyebrow before looking back at the Hokage, who was continuing his reading of the next section. Naruto, the next time I need something cataloged, I am definitely sending for you. Organization, detail and accuracy. You did it all perfectly. Not to mention taking the time to seal up the most valuable items and making sure they go where they need to be to allow the best use for the sake of the village. For that I thank you and offer you anything you want from this mission, so long as it is nothing too dangerous. Thanks Gigi-san, but there is nothing there that I can see myself needing at the moment. I have plenty of weapons and am still going through all the jutsu scrolls I've acquired over the years. I'll stick with what I have for now. Being able to complete such a high-ranking mission while only being a genin is more than enough of a reward for me. Now if I could be excused, I still have to hand in my other missions that I've completed today. Receiving a nod, Naruto bowed and left the room. Naruto, you are going to go far. I just pray that you keep your loyal attitude and don't let success go to your head. Shaking his head a little to lose such thoughts, he took the two sealing scrolls and stashed them in his safe. He would deal with them later. For now he turned back to examining the scrolls hidden amongst the map. Perhaps the information here, along with whatever Anko and Ibiki could find out, would shed some light on his former students' goals. It would seem his alternate reading material would have to be set aside for a while. Down in the mission hall, Iruka was bored out of his mind. The new teams were all taking their tests today, and all the old teams were out on longer missions. This would be a slow day for sure, but he managed to let his mind wander every once in a while to his former student that was apparently already achieving more than his peers. Hell, he was successfully completing more missions in a day than most shinobi completed in a week. Granted, they were all D ranks so far, but even so it was still an impressive number. Not to mention crushing the old record for catching Tora. No, crushing would be putting it nicely. Naruto completely obliterated the old record and wouldn't likely be matched for some time. He was brought out of his thoughts when the door opened and the object of those thoughts walked in. Ah, Naruto, so you've completed a mission today then? Which one is it? Iruka was already flipping through his clipboard as he looked for the listing of missions the boy had taken that morning. Finding them, he looked up just as Naruto dumped all 12 scrolls in front of him. Okay. Which is it? He scowled a little when the boy started laughing. As he waited for the boy to settle down a bit, the Chunin glared at him. Ha ha ha. Sorry Iruka-sensei, hee. They are all done. Hey, I told you this morning they would be, didn't I? He choked down more laughter as he watched his former sensei. If the man was surprised at that, he couldn't wait to see his reaction when he handed him his other successful mission. He waited until Iruka finished filling in the necessary information and brought his attention back to the waiting preteen. I have one more mission that I acquired while I was doing those, so you'll need to add this one into your list. With that, in a small flourish, he set the paper from the sandame in front of the skeptical former teacher. As soon as the man looked at it, Naruto could swear he saw his optical nerves for how wide his eyes went. Iruka looked from the paper to Naruto, back and forth a few times, trying to gain his voice. How? When? Where? Easily. A couple hours ago, and that's confidential. Is this real? Was all Iruka could think, but he knew the Hokage's signature by heart and his seal was also there. There was no denying the page in front of him. In a daze he wrote in the information. No doubt whoever totaled up today's missions to hand out the pay would need to confirm this one with the Hokage, even if they already had a signed paper. A genin doing a S-rank mission solo was unheard of. If you're finished, I have 2 questions for you. Getting a reluctant nod, Naruto continued. First, where can I get a bingo book? You would have to get one from the Anbu headquarters. They handle all of that information and the bounties. Fair enough. Next, what are my missions for this afternoon? It took all of Iruka's willpower to not scream at the boy for making them all look bad with his overachieving, but at the same time he couldn't help but be proud at how quickly his student was turning out missions, and seemingly undeterred by their monotony. Resigning himself to fate, he waved casually to the restocked pile of D-rank missions and watched as Naruto picked through them. Nay, Iruka-sensei. Genin are allowed to do low C-rank missions, right? Iruka knew he wasn't going to like where this was going already, but he was obliged to answer. Hi. Genin teams are allowed to go on low-risk C-rank missions after a specified number of D-rank missions are completed. They normally only involve bandits or escorts, though sometimes there can be an outside influence or misinformation that raises the rank during the mission. Most of those low-end missions are done with countries that are bordering fire country to keep the risk of encountering too many unfamiliar ninja at a minimum. If something does go wrong though, they have a Jonin-sensei there to get them out of trouble. Thanks, Iruka-sensei. I'll keep that in mind for later. For now I'll take these scrolls. A small mountain of scrolls rolled out in front of the Chunin, who hesitantly began to mark them down. He was beyond worrying about numbers now. Naruto had already proven himself capable of doing multiple missions quickly. Again he noted there were 1 or 2 physically demanding missions amongst numerous random missions. This time it was wood cutting, and a small one for someone moving into a new house. Finishing the last notation, he set the last scroll back in front of him as he noticed Naruto writing out another scroll. If he didn't know any better, he'd swear it was a sealing scroll. His suspicion were proven correct as Naruto stacked the mission scrolls on the newly made sealing scroll and sealed them inside before rolling up the scroll and shoving it back in his pocket before thanking the man and leaving again. Iruka could only shake his head as he learned more and more about his former student, and with each new piece of information he got, he was starting to think he had taught the boy far less than the boy actually learned. Outside the mission hall, Naruto once again formed his army, which quickly ran off after obtaining their new missions. Leading the remnants away, he made a quick stop at the Anbu headquarters while his clones waited patiently outside. Walking up to the counter and ringing the bell brought forward an old woman who seemed to have sucked on about 10 too many lemons and wore glasses that could probably double as paper weights. Hello, I would like to know how I can acquire a bingo book. You a ninja? Hi. You any good? I like to think so, yes. Well, bingo books cost 500 ryu. If you're a ninja, then you're welcome to purchase one. Though from the sounds of it you seem pretty young. I don't think you are going to get much out of it. Regardless, she grabbed one of the booklets from the shelf behind her. Naruto was slightly put out, but not deterred. He grabbed his money pouch and pulled out the necessary amount before handing it over to the woman. Even the strongest ninja can be taken down if he doesn't know what he's getting into. Having knowledge of what I can handle is something that could save my life someday. The woman took the offered money and handed him the thick booklet. True enough, boy. If half the ninja here were smart enough to know their limitations, our memorial stone wouldn't be half as big as it is. Good luck out there and don't get yourself killed off too soon. Hey, thanks Oba-san. Maybe someday I'll live long enough for my picture to show up in one of these. Waving, he made his way out of the building as the old woman smiled approvingly at his back. Yes, if half our shinobi were that smart going into this mess, we wouldn't have much to worry about. Isn't that right, Neko-chan? The woman fixed her glasses on her nose as she turned away from the counter. Hi Taicho. Impromptu high-ranking mission aside, the rest of Naruto's week was pretty much the same each day. Wake up, do a dozen or so missions, eat lunch, do another dozen or so missions, training, then bed. The only exception being that when he found out Hinata wasn't busy on certain afternoons, he would take her out to lunch or dinner. They even made plans for Sunday to have a small picnic. That would be tomorrow, so today being Saturday and the mission hall being closed on weekends, Naruto decided he'd spend what time he had free training. He had been setting up clones in his hideaway all week, training what he thought they could transfer to him. Jutsu, chakra control, Kenjutsu and Taijutsu were the most noticeable acquired talents, but they still needed tested to see if he did actually pick them up and could remember them. He had slept in a little since he was in no hurry. As such, he was arriving at the entrance to his hideaway when the sun was just barely kissing the roofs of the taller buildings. He quickly disappeared while merchants started making their way to their stores to set up their wares. As the first of them reached their shops, he was already creating his clones. By the time they opened up, he was already discovering what he'd hoped. By the time they got their first customers, he was already testing the combat prowess of his newly learned skills. By the time his old classmates were starting their training, he was taking a well-deserved break with a visit to Ichiraku's. He was on his third bowl of ramen when some new company dropped by. Greetings, Naruto-san. Having a full mouth, Naruto could only nod in greeting. Hokage-sama wishes to speak with you at your convenience. He swallowed hard before speaking. Thank you, Anbu-san. I'll be there right after I finish this bowl. The Anbu nodded before disappearing via Shunshin. Old man, looks like I gotta go. I'll see ya later. Naruto laid his money on the counter and headed to the Hokage Tower. Deciding to follow protocol for once, he addressed the secretary. Not to mention it was Saturday, so there was the possibility that the man wasn't in the tower at all, so it would have been embarrassing to just barge in with no one there. Oi, Oji-san wanted to see me. Is he here? The secretary seemed to have not heard him at all as she just continued writing on some paperwork. After standing for a couple minutes waiting patiently, he decided to try again. Anyo, did you hear me? He was met with a glare that he was all too familiar with. Sighing, he continued. Okay, look, I'm not really liking you at the moment, and it's rather obvious that you loathe me, but I was summoned by the Hokage to see him, and if you don't tell me when and where I can find him, then two things are going to happen. First, I will barge in that room and try to find him myself. Second, I will let him know of your refusal to help me, which will probably end in your early termination or worse. The woman's scowl only deepened, but she finally relented and simply waved him off towards the door. Muttering under her breath something about demons and murder. Shaking his head, Naruto just entered the office and slumped down into a chair. So what's this about, Oji-san? It took a moment for Hiruzen to finish the paper he was currently working on before stamping, declined, on it. Sighing as he set the sheet aside, he turned to his guest. Naruto, due to an influx of missions lately, and as such a lessening of personnel, we are a bit short-handed at the moment. Yet at the same time, the documents you found could be of great value to us. As such, and due to your prior involvement in finding them, I would like you to take them back to your safe house, and go through them. This is to be done immediately and as quickly as possible while still maintaining quality. I would assume you know how to do this by your mission completion count and the comments they held. As much as I would like to assign this to other departments, this information could be very dangerous in the wrong hands. You are to tell no one except myself what you find out, and you are to tell no one, including myself, where you are conducting your research. This will be classified as a high A rank and possible S rank depending on what the library contains as well as how beneficial the information is. Do you have any questions? Only one. What do you consider as important? Plans, village secrets, experiment details, and anything that could possibly cripple Konoha or make one of our enemies stronger. Good luck, Naruto. Tossing the library storage scroll at the boy, he waved him off before grabbing another sheet from his pile of papers. Permanent bodyguard assignment for the civilian council members and their families. Do they think we just pop a new ninja out of a scroll whenever we need one? Denied. Naruto was already halfway to his hideaway before he found himself suddenly surrounded by what appeared to be Anbu. Danzo-sama requests your audience, boy. One of them said with obvious contempt. Naruto tried to think of who this Danzo was. He knew he heard the name before. Ah yes, the Hokage had been cursing that name on quite a few occasions. I'm sorry, but I'm in a bit of a hurry. Please give Danzo-san my. It seems you misunderstood me. When Danzo-sama requests an audience of someone, they give him an audience. The man pulled his ninjutsu out of its sheath a bit to emphasize his point. Now Naruto was on edge. Someone demanding him with the use of force was no one he wanted to see while carrying sensitive documents. Putting his hands in his pockets, he glared at the Anbu that seemed to be the leader. Then, without even blinking, he let a huge grin cross his face, confusing the Anbu right before he let a small ball fall from his pocket. When the four ninjas saw the ball drop, they reacted, but it was already too late. With a small pop, the area was covered in smoke. By the time the smoke cleared, all that was left were four very pissed off ninja and one tied up log. Running down an alleyway, Naruto let out a small chuckle as he made his way towards his destination. He took an indirect route this time to confuse any possible trackers. Though it would give the men more time to find him, it would also keep him away from main viewing areas and not give a clear idea of where he was headed. There were 2 points during his journey that he had to hide himself as he saw 2 different groups of Anbu making their way across town. He couldn't tell if they were looking for him or not, but he wasn't going to take that chance. After another half hour of alley crawling and shadow creeping, he was back at the entrance to his underground domain. Slipping inside, he gave a sigh of relief as he made his way back down the tunnel. Today was the closest he'd gotten to getting tailed here, and he wasn't happy about it. He would have to start making sure he wasn't followed from now on, now that it seemed someone wanted to see him very badly, and that someone was a person that the Hokage didn't like. Anyone that the old man was wary of was definitely someone Naruto didn't want any close contact with. Back in the safety of his second home, he dispelled his current clones before making a new set. If this information was as important as Oji-san thought, then he wouldn't want to risk getting it crossed with his training. Channeling chakra through the scroll, he began handing out various scrolls and books to the clones around him. Since they would be stationary through most of this, he had created more than normal. As they got a scroll and took a blank scroll with writing materials from a nearby rack, they found a place to sit on the floor, walls or ceiling, and got to work. It didn't take long for Naruto to find out just how serious this information was. Since he had already taken the time to categorize the books and scrolls, it wasn't difficult to bypass the jutsu scrolls and go right for the meat of the beast. Journals, notes and various informative literature was laid out around the room, each having a clone going through it. When they got all the information they could out of one text, they brought it back to Naruto, giving a short summary before taking another item to study. Meanwhile, Naruto was labeling sheets of paper and tacking them to one of the walls. Whenever 2 sources seemed to be related, he tied a string to a senbon after sticking them into the wall near the related pieces. Halfway through the scroll, he was quickly becoming frustrated. Everything seemed to be related judging by the number of strings now crisscrossing the wall. There was information from everything between anatomy and theology. Almost every subject that related to humans was covered. It looked like someone was doing a completely in-depth study of humans, but why? The question raked over his brain with every new piece of information he was given. If you left out the twisted experiments, it almost seemed like a course for medical training. Very, very advanced medical training. Add in those experiments though, and everything was twisted. It seemed like something was missing though, but what? He sighed, turning away from the wall again. He glanced over as a clone came up with a freshly finished book as it droned out what it had summarized from the contents. Another anatomy piece. Sighing again, Naruto went to get another piece from the storage scroll when he found himself holding a jutsu scroll. Without realizing it, he had gotten through the literature portion of the library. Still, he hadn't found anything to solidify the connection. Leaning against the wall, he regarded the scroll in his hands. It looked to be some kind of psychic projection jutsu. If only I could do that, I'd transfer myself into the guy who did all this and find out what he was planning straight from the source. Tossing the scroll to the clone so fast that it almost dispelled from the hit, he looked at his written classifications of the jutsu the storage scroll contained. Running between it and his mosaic on the wall, he began writing out new slips of paper, shooting them out at a frenzied pace. Needles and string seemed to materialize around them almost as fast as they got put up. It took another half-hour before he was finished, but when he did, the connection was glaringly obvious. There in the center of it all were 2 points where the majority of the strings connected. Taking out 2 blank sheets of paper, he wrote down every connecting point for those 2 concentrations before speeding out of the room, stopping only briefly to lock it behind him. Inside, the clones just shrugged and went about their reading. Bursting through the doors to the Hokage Tower, Naruto flew right past a protesting secretary yet again, and through the doors to the office opened before slamming them shut. He took a quick look around and instantly noticed something he really didn't want to deal with right now. There, before the Hokage, was a genin team. Not just any genin team though, this was Team 7, otherwise known as Team Kakashi. Yes, here stood the people he wanted to run into the least, and all of them were glaring at him. Well, all but the man behind the desk, who looked a bit shocked to see the boy so soon. Hey Dobi, if you don't mind, we are discussing a mission with the Hokage. Useless trash like you should wait outside while we real ninja take care of business. Sasuke seemed to have his nose stuck higher in the air than normal today. Yeah, what Sasuke-kun said. Now get out of here before I knock you back through the door you came in. Sakura was already pushing up her sleeve, getting ready for a punch. Hey, barging into the Hokage's office when he could be in a meeting discussing village secrets. I wouldn't be surprised if you were in a cell by the end of the day. In fact, I hope that's the case, because then Hinata will realize just how much of a loser you are. Kiba's grin seemed to grow as he filled his own pride with words. Ma, you shouldn't say such things to a comrade. He may end up on a mission with you sometime soon. Having bad feelings between you all wouldn't be very good for teamwork, now would it? Finally, someone who wasn't a complete asshole to him. Now, if you don't mind waiting outside, Naruto. I'm sure your stories about ramen can wait a few more minutes. Spoke too soon. Sasuke turned back to the Hokage, completely ignoring the barely controlled ki coming from the blonde. So Sarutobi-san, how about that C-rank mission? I am more than ready for something other than these waste of time D ranks. Chasing a cat around for 3 hours is not exactly my idea of ninja training. Yeah, Sasuke-kun needs harder missions to show off his real strength. By this point, Sarutobi just wanted them all out of his sight. He knew what Naruto was here for must be important. Fine, you get your C rank. He pressed a call button under his desk and told his secretary to bring the client in. Half a moment of waiting soon reveled a drunk, haggard-looking old man with a bottle of sake. This is Tazuna, a bridge builder from the land of waves. Your mission is to escort him home and guard him until he finishes his latest project. So these are the ones that'll be taking me, huh? I ask for AC rank mission and all I get is a bunch of brats. The man slurred out. I assure you, Tazuna-san, my team is more than capable of protecting you. Kakashi tried to reassure the man, but Naruto still saw doubt in his eyes. Voice dripping with sarcasm, he let out his retort. Yes, Tazuna-san. You have the famed Hatake Kakashi escorting you, but if he fails, never fear, the mighty Uchiha will save the day. Most likely by literally throwing the bubblegum princess at whoever tries to overshadow his glory. Even if you do somehow get killed, I'm sure Fleabag over there will claw you out a nice grave before he tucks tail and runs. He got glares from Kiba and Sakura, an amused smile from Sarutobi, Tazuna and Kakashi, and oddly enough the mighty Uchiha seemed to not even realize the jest and looked more arrogant than ever. Like he actually believed that is exactly what would happen. Well, at least with the blonde one along I won't get bored. Tazuna stated with a half-drunk smile. Sorry, but I won't be joining you on your little excursion. I'm just here to report to Oji-san what my meager self has discovered in regards to certain recent findings and what they mean for our village's future. Tazuna looked visibly saddened by the news, but reluctantly left the room with the three stooges when Kakashi told them to meet at the gate in an hour. After the door was shut, Kakashi turned and put on a serious face, put on serious eyes, showing he was ready to discuss serious matters. Hatake-san, I suggest you go prepare for your mission as well. Escorting a bridge builder shouldn't be taken lightly. Kakashi turned to the boy before speaking. If it involves defending the village, then I believe that I should stay in case my input is needed. As one of the senior shinobi, and an ex-Anbu, I have expertise in many matters. Having me here would probably be best depending on what the information is, Naruto-chan. He gave Naruto an eye smile, happy that he got a chance to return the earlier jab the boy made. I am sorry, Kakashi-kun, but Naruto is correct in what he is implying. This is a mission that I gave to Naruto, requiring the utmost secrecy. The people who are allowed to know what is involved are very few, and I don't intend to make the group any larger just yet. Should we find something that we need your assistance in, you will be notified. Now, if you please, Naruto-kun and myself have business to discuss. Hiruzen spoke with all of his authority to make sure Kakashi got the point that the information to be exchanged was not for his ears. With a slight frown, the copy ninja got up and walked out the door, sparing one last glance at the genin in the cage before closing the door behind him. Naruto walked over and locked the door, activating the security seals before walking up to the desk. Hokage-sama, I have some interesting findings from the literature and jutsu that I found in the lair. It seems it was a testing area for two experimental subjects. The first, he placed one of the 2 pages on the desk before continuing. Quote, seems to be some sort of seal that enhances the bearer's strengths, but also subjects them to the will of the one who gives them the seal, provided that person puts a portion of his own essence into it. As you can see on this list, there was extensive testing using poisons that would weaken the subject's will, as well as enhancement seals and soul-splitting jutsu. He noticed the small tick in the Hokage's eyebrow and grew instantly suspicious. You've seen this before, or the effects? Sarutobi sighed. The boy already knew far more than he would have liked a genin to know, but he could sense the boy's loyalty to the village. It was almost palatable. Maybe not loyal to the villagers, but he would definitely never betray the village like certain others who strove only for power. Yes, Naruto, I have seen a portion of its effects. We have one of the affected in this village. Many don't trust her because of her involvement with a traitor, but she is one of our most loyal ninja regardless of what others think. I believe she was given an early version of this as, while she does show signs of pain every once in a while, she has for the most part kept it at bay. I see. If you would allow it, and if she allows it, I would like to study her infliction a bit. With all of the makings of it here, we may be able to reverse engineer it, and find a way to subdue it if not remove it altogether. He could see the shock in the old man's eyes. Apparently he was still getting used to Naruto's newly found brain. Shaking out of his startled daze, Sarutobi turned his attention back to the paper, reading it over before looking back at the blonde. You said there were two. Ah, yes, almost forgot the second. He placed the last sheet on the desk. It seems to be akin to the Yamanaka mind transfer jutsu, though much more potent. It's almost like the person was trying to permanently take over someone's body. I don't know why, but that is the best explanation I could come up with. Sorry OG-san. Naruto felt a bit ashamed that that was the best he could surmise, but got confused when he saw how pale the old man had gotten. OG-san. Naruto, what I am about to tell you cannot leave this room. Understood. A nod for an answer was his sign to continue. You no doubt know of the traitor Orochimaru. Another nod. He was an over-ambitious student of mine that ended up being chased out of the village because of inhumane experiments he had been conducting. The first item you brought up was his cursed seal. I know that this must have been an earlier version, and I will admit I have no idea of most of its capabilities, but what we have found is that the later versions make a person an unwilling. What it takes to activate though, we never found out. Sarutobi sighed as he looked at the next sheet. The second piece of information is an affront to humanity and never should have been dreamed up. You are correct in your analysis of its main goal. That being to take over a body completely by devouring the previous soul, thus allowing one to jump from one body to the next as often as one wants, but in doing so destroying the souls of those whose bodies you've abducted. A cold shiver went down Naruto's spine at the thought of someone using such a technique. Sure, it had the benefit of becoming basically whoever you want to be, and never having to worry about old age, but at what cost? It was clear to him that this Orochimaru would have to be stopped, but how do you know who to look for when the man could be anyone? He put that thought aside though, as he was more worried about things closer to home. As disturbing as this all is, I would still like to meet the person with the seal on them. While you work on getting that set up, I'm going to see if I can make heads or tails of what I found based on what you've told me. I'll leave a clone here. If you need me, just let it know and it will make sure I get the message. Now, if I may be excused. Before he could leave, he watched the Hokage begin to fill out another sheet similar to the one filled out after the completion of his first S-rank mission. Holding it out for Naruto to take, he answered the unspoken question. Your tasks for this mission are far from over, as this will be an ongoing investigation until you've found out everything you can from what you've looked through, or a more qualified person shows up to relieve you of your task. You will be paid for the mission as an ongoing investigation. Meaning when you find more information, and if it is deemed worthy of a reward, I will fill out another sheet and the notes will be added to this mission's file. Again, I remind you that everything involving this mission is top secret unless I myself give you leave to speak of it. Understood, Hokage-sama. I'll see you later, OG-san. Hiruzen watched the boy retreat out the door before allowing himself a small sad smile. He hated having to put such a task on such an innocent child, but there really was no one else, and he was unfortunately not as innocent as he seemed. Anko and Ibiki were still investigating the remains from the lair along with their own interrogation duties, and all other qualified shinobi we either out on missions or haven't been back to the village in years. Tsunade, Jiraiya, I could really use your help about now. He gazed out the window, noticing a small speck on the horizon. Looks like more work is on the way. Well, I guess I didn't accept this position for the long vacations. Sighing, he locked up the two sheets that held the detailed information Naruto had given him before turning back to his paperwork to keep busy until the new message came. A small feeling of dread seemed to fly along with it. Naruto sat in his room, meditating, as memories of the information he discovered ran through his head. He was linking what he'd read from the scrolls and books with what he saw in the lair. It would be a slow process, but by taking what his clones had learned after dispelling them, he allowed himself to make links that he hadn't seen initially. From the detailed explanations of the experiments, to the twisted results they showed, he was systematically reconstructing parts of the life of a madman in his head. His hopes were that when he was finished he could find out exactly how the seal worked and find a way to cage its effects if he wasn't able to abolish them altogether. The experiments themselves were rather ruthless and gut-wrenching, but he'd experienced the like or worse in many cases, so it didn't affect him too much. He still would seem paler than normal to anyone who knew him well. By the time he finished analyzing the 10th experiment he was more than ready for a break. Which was convenient because it was only a moment later that he felt information from the clone in the Hokage's office come to him. It seemed that they really were short-handed as a notice had just came in from the recently departed Team 7. Their mission had been raised to AB rank, possibly low A rank, when they had gotten attacked by the infamous Demon Brothers. His mind processed the information as he sat there. The two were in the bingo book as Chunin rank missing nin from Kurigakure no Sato. Gozu and Maizu easily filled the qualifications to raise the mission difficulty. Wasting no more time, Naruto gathered his belongings before heading to his hideaway to gather the tools he would need. With his ninjata once again strapped to his back, and his shin and forearm guards strapped in place, he was out the door and off to the tower once again. So the great Uchiha needs more company to bask in his glory, I hear, was his remark as he walked into the office. Hiruzen couldn't help but chuckle. Hi Naruto. It would seem that way. I assume that you have everything you need. The Hokage looked the boy over, quickly taking note of the sword and guards as well as the lack of a backpack. You do realize that you will be there until the bridge is finished, correct? Hi, I am all prepared. He pulled out a few scrolls and showed them off before pocketing them again. All I need is a mission scroll and I'll be on my way to worship the ground the Uchiha walks upon. Okay Naruto, I know they aren't the most pleasant of people to work with, but please remember that they are your comrades, and try not to kill them. Naruto only laughed a little as he nodded before catching the scroll thrown his way. And I will try to have a meeting set up for you and the previously discussed person upon your return. Sounds good Oji-san. I'll see you when I get back. Make sure the village stays in one piece so we can roll out the red carpet when the victorious bobblehead quartet returns. With that last jab in there he was off and bounding towards the gates. Had he been a normal genin, or still in his mask from school, he would have been excited about leaving the village. As he was now, though, he merely waved the mission scroll at the gate guards as he stepped out with his nose buried in the bingo book that he had purchased recently. The Demon Brothers were missing nin after all, so chances of there being others on this little tour would be very high. He focused on the Kurigakure ones specifically as the nins would probably want to work with other nins that they would be familiar with, or at least share some background with. Momochi Zabuza, Demon of the Bloody Mist. Rank Jonin. Tomatsu Uesugi, Herald of the Squall. Rank Chunin. Kafu Oba, Blood Red Tide. Rank Jonin. Damn, all these guys have nicknames. Now that I think about it, the Konoha Jonin seem to have nicknames too. Maybe I should start thinking of one for myself, or are they normally given to you by someone? Huh, oh well, looks like I'm going to have company before I need to worry about that. With one last push of a branch he spun around in the air, blocking the numerous projectiles coming his way with a kunai in each hand. His assailant appeared on the branch he just left and stood facing him. Ah, Kafu-san, I was just reading about you. Naruto addressed the man while waving his bingo book in the air. You're pretty famous. I'll admit I'm slightly impressed, Gaki, but you are far from being a hunter nin. I'll let you go with a free pass this time and a warning. This route is off limits as of now. Turn back home and I'll let you off the hook just this once. Ah, but I really wanted to see my friends. Maybe you saw them. One was probably scratching away fleas and carries a little dog with him. the other boy probably had a storm cloud permanently raining on his parade. You wouldn't have been able to miss the bright pink hair of the girl though. Wouldn't be able to miss her squealing either, no doubt. They would have been traveling with a one-eyed roster and an old drunk. You sure have a funny way of talking about your friends there, kid, but it is rather amusing. They did pass by here not too long ago. I was told by my employer to let them through since he wanted to know that they died with a little hope of reaching their destination. For some reason he seems to have a fetish for crushing people's hope. Kafu chuckled out. Well, if you're not going to let me pass, and I won't go back to the village without completing my mission, I guess there is only one thing left to do. Naruto held his hand out, 2 fingers extended toward Kafu. Said man got ready for anything. The kid hadn't done any seals, so it could be a bloodline. His senses turned full tilt onto the boy before him, getting ready to tell him to move away from danger at a moment's notice. Do you really think you can take on the blood-red tide of Kiri, little Genin? Not can. Did. Kafu's eyes narrowed at the implied promise of defeat, but before he could call the bluff he heard another word. Bang. His eyes widened as his world became pain. An explosion had rocked from right under him without any warning. He couldn't understand if it was a trap, jutsu or something else, nor did he really care at the moment. All he cared about right then was getting the pain to stop. As he hit the forest floor with a sickening thump and adjoining snaps of bone, the pain renewed as he looked and saw his left arm and leg no longer attached. Clamping his right hand over the stump that was left of his other arm, he tried to staunch the bleeding in a vain attempt to live. He looked up when he heard footsteps coming closer and tried to push himself farther away with his one good leg. You see, Kafu, the one mistake you made was underestimating me. You may be a Jonin and I may be a Genin, but just because you outrank me does not mean I have no skills at all. The same voice came from the opposite direction. Some of us Genin, and newly graduated I might add, have pushed ourselves above and beyond what was needed in order to pass. Some of us know what the real world is like and what it takes to survive. Another voice joined in and he turned his head again to see the same blonde once more. Some of us have been playing the survival game all our lives. Goodbye, Kafu-san. With a single motion, Kafu's head was separated from his body and all he knew was darkness. Sorry, Kafu-san, but I didn't have time to play with you right now. Naruto rifled through the man's belongings, taking anything he deemed worth having, including money, weapons, jutsu scrolls and some scrolls that seemed to pertain to the man's mission. The last item he took from Kafu was what had to be the man's main weapon. A black-bladed katana that was almost as tall as Naruto. Its sheath was a deep red that almost looked like fresh spilled blood. With his ninja secured parallel to the ground at his lower back, Naruto strapped the katana crosswise over his right shoulder. He would now have a blade at his disposal from either hand should one be occupied, though the katana would be a little more awkward to draw in combat. Standing up, he used a quick kaiden, Gokaku no Jutsu, to destroy the body before sealing away the head and belongings. Saying a quick prayer, he took to the trees again, picking up his pace a little in order to make up for lost time. He wanted to make sure he caught up with them faster now, as he knew there would be more Jonin-level trouble ahead of them, more than one if they were unlucky. Kakashi was not having fun. He was currently watching as his Genin team was attempting to fight off Zabuza's Mizu Bunshin. He sent for backup, but with missions picking up the way they had been lately, there was little hope of it coming today, let alone right this minute. He could only reflect on what had happened and hope that his students would have the sense to run away. That was looking highly unlikely though. First Zabuza appeared and after a short skirmish he brought the mist in. That was when everything started to go to hell. Up until the point of his capture, Kakashi had been barely keeping up with the missing nin. He knew there were a couple of close calls in there, but as soon as he landed in the water it was over. Water was Zabuza's main element, which gave him the home field advantage. As soon as Kakashi's head poked out of the water, it was already too late. The water prison was forming, and before he could come up with a counter, he was trapped. It was then that he had told his team to make a run for it. Sakura and Kiba were clearly shaking. Tazuna was nearly pissing himself, but to his dismay it was the Uchiha that turned out to be the dumbest one of the group. He arrogantly strode to the front of the line and demanded Zabuza let his sensei go. Kakashi wasn't stupid. He knew that the only reason the boy wanted him free was because he saw his Sharingan. No doubt he was going to whine about it the entire trip. That is if the trip didn't include 4 spirits going to the afterlife together. Though he still figured the boy would demand answers even then. He had been further horrified when Zabuza created more Bunshin and began attacking the trio of genin. Merely toying with them. Even though they were only Bunshin, they were still a lot stronger than any mere genin. All they ended up accomplishing was earning a new set of scars, and sealing their fates as Sasuke taunted the amused demon more. It seemed that this would be the end. He could hear the pipes of the afterlife playing a sad tune for them already. No, he really could hear someone playing pipes. He did his best to turn his head out towards the water, noticing as Zabuza did the same. The Bunshin, being distracted in the same manner, were taken out, but the 3 genin with little trouble because of that. Though when Sasuke tried to charge out to take on the main body of the Kiri-nin, he found that the water there wasn't nearly as shallow as he had thought based on how the enemy ninja was simply standing on it. Fuming and now soaked, he waded back to the shore as he tried to think of a way to get out there and beat the man to a pulp. Both of the elder ninja ignored the fuming ninja though as a shadow started to form out of the dispersing mist. As the figure got closer, Kakashi was able to make out small details. Whoever it was a ninja, that much was certain. They were walking on the surface of the water towards the group. They were also rather short, looking to be about the size of his own students. What really threw him off though was that the person was alone. Surely Hokage-sama would have sent more than one person as backup. Then the mist cleared away from the figure and Kakashi's heart sank. There was the telltale blonde hair, blue eyes and whiskered cheeks of Uzumaki Naruto, calmly playing a tune on a set of panpipes. Now there would be a number of 5 bodies for Konoha to retrieve, and there was nothing Kakashi could do about it. Zabuza on the other hand was not just idly musing over the blonde. No, he was searching the area for any more chakra signatures. He had seen what was strapped on the boy's back and he didn't want to be surprised by any group that could take out Kafu. He may not have been one of the 7 swordsmen like Zabuza, but he was no slouch of a ninja either, maybe a bit overconfident though. The whole time he was searching, Naruto was getting closer. It unnerved Zabuza how calm the boy was. Either he was stupid like that raven-haired brat or he was very trusting of his companions. Something told him to be wary of the blonde and he wasn't going to dismiss his gut feeling. Creating a few more Mizu Bunshin, he had them surround the boy before he got too close. "What is your business here, brat?" One of the clones addressed Naruto, who in turn simply stopped playing his music and calmly stowed his pipes away. Angling his body out to look around the Bunshin, he spotted Kakashi in the bubble of water. "Ah, so I finally caught up. No offense, but with Tazuna-san in tow I didn't think you would make it so far this fast. You idiot, get out of here, you're no match for Zabuza. Get whatever backup you came with and report to the Hokage." Kakashi resigned himself to his fate. But Kakashi-san, I wanted to play a little. Let me have some fun before you shoo me off." Without even seeing a movement from the boy, all of the clones suddenly broke into water and splashed away. Both Jonin stared wide-eyed now. Here was a genin who had just taken out clones of one of the 7 swordsmen. Sure, they may not have been a full-powered ninja, but that didn't make them pushovers. Naruto once again walked slowly towards the pair. When he was about 10 feet away, he stopped and looked at Zabuza. "Won't you let him go, please? I really don't want to have to do anything drastic. Get lost, kid, before I decide you really are a threat." "Ah, so you were considering it already. Well, that's a start, I guess, but you make it sound like you won't give in. I guess that means I will just have to improvise. Now, Naruto wasn't a moron, as I'm sure you figured out by now. He knew that the seven swordsmen of the mist were extremely deadly, and chances of him surviving a fight with one were between slim and none, but he wouldn't have to fight one at all. Making a few hand seals, his chest puffed out. Futon. Rinkuden, a concentrated blast of air headed straight for Zabuza's arm that was keeping the water prison active. Having no time to counter, Zabuza had two choices. 1. Release the jutsu and deal with this new and rather intriguing boy and Hatake Kakashi, the copy ninja. Or 2. Let the jutsu hit his arm, most likely breaking it and releasing the jutsu, then have to deal with the blonde and Kakashi anyway. Well, that was a rather obvious decision for him as he jumped back away from the blast, allowing the compressed air to sail harmlessly by him, but before he could get his bearings back though he was hit with another blast of air from the direction of his former prisoner. Futon. Daitapa, the blast sent him into a tree on the shore, knocking him into a daze for a couple seconds, but that was all Kakashi needed as kunai shot out and disabled Zabuza's arms and legs. Slumping to the ground, he watched as the two walked to him. So I guess this is the end of the fun, huh? Hi. Find peace in death, Zabuza-san. Kakashi brought up a kunai and was about to take the man's life but dove out of the way instead as a couple senbons struck Zabuza's neck. The missing nin's eyes went wide before he slumped lifelessly to the ground. A small figure wearing an Anbu-style mask jumped down beside the corpse and bowed at Kakashi. I thank you for your assistance in the death of Momochi Zabuza, and apologize that I could not get here sooner. He seems to have caused you quite a bit of trouble. Kakashi rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. Heh. Don't worry about it, Hunter-san. It all worked out in the end, right? Indeed. They both looked over to where the blonde was checking the corpse. Well, he definitely seems dead. I congratulate you on your skills. Hunter-san. The Hunter nin's eyes widened even though none of those present could see it. Naruto started towards the ninja. Tell me, Hunter-san, how long have you been after this one? Before Kakashi or Naruto could react, the Hunter nin shunshin to the body of Zabuza, then grabbing onto him shunshin away. HMPH. That one does have some skills after all. The other genin and Tazuna had just reached the two in time to see Naruto before he had a chance to mask his anger. They stopped a bit short, suddenly feeling slightly uneasy. That all changed though when he smiled again and turned to them. Well, now that that is over with, what say we get a move on to Tazuna's place so we can get on with this mission? What are you doing here, Dobi? We were doing fine without you. Sasuke, arrogant as usual. And his personal cheerleader right on cue. Yeah, didn't you see how Sasuke-kun took out all those guys? He was so cool. Surprisingly, Kiba had nothing to say, nor did Kakashi apparently, as he collapsed forward to land face first in the dirt. Shit. Looks like I used my eye a bit too much. You're going to have to carry me with you. Sorry. The Jonin said a bit sheepishly. Easy enough. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A few clones popped up and soon had Kakashi slung between them. On their way past him, Naruto, as an afterthought, pulled Kakashi's Hitai back over his eye, much to the Jonin's relief. As they made their way to Tazuna's village, Naruto looked at his comrades. The different emotions were easily read on everyone's faces. Kakashi was the most reserved, but looking closely he could see his eyeball moving under his closed eyelid. He may be resting, but his mind was still working feverishly. The Uchiha was still walking with his nose in the air, despite how torn up he was from the fight with Zabuza's clones, and of course the Banshee was right beside him, stroking his ego, seemingly unaware that she had almost died a few minutes ago. Meanwhile, Kiba was talking to Akamaru about how he decimated those Bunshin. Lastly, Tazuna was looking around, scared out of his wits. Naruto sighed. Out of everyone here, only Kakashi, himself and surprisingly Tazuna, were the only ones doing remotely the right thing. The other three genin being too openly full of themselves after their first day of real fighting. Naruto. Kakashi whispered with his eye still closed. He addressed the masked Jonin without turning his head. Hi. I need to talk to you when we get to Tazuna's house, alone. Hi. Unfortunately his ears weren't the only ones to hear the statement. Why should the Dobi get a private lesson when it can go to someone more worthy? Like myself. The always arrogant Uchiha unfortunately was one of those people. Sasuke, the only thing you are worthy of is you are right now as fodder. Drop our ego and take a look around for once. Maybe just maybe you'll actually see an attack coming before it hits you. Naruto was in no mood to hear the boy's high and mighty talks right now. Don't you talk to Sasuke-kun like that. He is more worthy of a private lesson than you'll ever be, Naruto Baka. With an attitude like that, it's no wonder your parents left you. Sakura would have no idea that she was closer to death at that moment than during any point of their fight with Zabuza. Upon hearing her statement, Kakashi's eye widened as he shot out his arm and caught Naruto just as he was about to rush her. Naruto was gritting his teeth in anger at the pink-haired bitch, but luckily Kakashi had caught him before he made a rash move. Taking some calming breaths before he could make a mistake, he leveled his glare on Sakura, who had enough sense to back away a little. Sakura, do not presume that you know even a second of my life or that of my parents. I may not know who they are, but you certainly don't either. So until anyone has a definite answer of who they are and what they are like, don't you dare belittle them. With a little key added in, Sakura was soon hiding behind Tazuna. Naruto just scoffed at her actions as he motioned for Tazuna to continue. After another hour of walking, they finally arrived at Tazuna's house on the edge of a dilapidated village. They were welcomed by Tazuna's daughter Tsunami, who wore an obviously fake smile. Though she was genuinely happy that her father arrived safely, you could see the stress behind her features. She led them to their rooms, allowing Kakashi and Sakura their own, while Kiba, Sasuke and Naruto would be bunked together in one of the larger rooms. The two Team 7 boys looked less than pleased at the news, whereas Naruto seemed to care less where he slept. While Team 7 was getting situated, Naruto decided to meet with Kakashi as promised. Upon entering the Jonin's room, he found the man to be resting in the same position he was in when they laid him out. While his face was calm and his body was unmoving, Naruto could almost see the gears in his head spinning. He closed the door and slipped a seal over the joint to make sure they wouldn't be interrupted. As he knelt next to Kakashi, the man opened his eyes and just stared at the ceiling. Naruto. Hi. Where did you get that katana? From a ninja I killed on the way to you. The boy stated easily. Do you really expect me to believe that you took on a Jonin-level missing nin in the time it took you to catch up to us? And that you were able to walk away without a scratch? No, I don't expect you to believe either. He was simply unprepared and underestimated who he was fighting. Plant a seed in the side of a mountain and the mountain will stay standing. Give that seed what it needs to grow and soon you will see its roots dig into the rock face and, over time, the mountain will begin to crack. So you're saying you only beat him because he gave you a chance to? That still doesn't sound very believable. The Jonin scoffed. Kakashi, when you look at me, what do you see? I see a genin with decent skills and timing. Since our fight with Zabuza was only a few seconds long, at least the portion of it where you showed off any skills, I really don't have much to go on. So then what level of threat do you see me as to you? Kakashi started to chuckle a bit. At the moment you might as well be a cage for the amount of movement I can make. A quick glare from the genin told him this was no time to joke around. Sighing, he took a moment to think over what he knew from the boys' academy results and what little he's seen of him. When at full potential, I would see you as an above-average genin with a decent head on his shoulders. Then you would also fall to me. Kakashi was surprised at the boy's seriousness when he said that, then scowled at him, thinking the genin had the nerve to underestimate him. Then just how strong do you think you are? He spat out with a bit more venom than he meant to. Naruto just got up and walked towards the door. He turned back when he got within touching distance. Stronger than you think I am, he said nonchalantly before removing his seal and leaving the room. Kakashi was still a bit angry at the bite to his pride, but something disturbed him about the boy. Not once did he portray any emotion. He never let his voice raise in anger or show any sign of fear. As he went over their conversation, along with recent events and revelations, the only thing he could think of was that Naruto was right. Had he fought against the blonde, he would have conserved his energy by lowering his level a bit. That could have easily been his downfall. It was the same way many ninja had died in years past, and was certain to be their fatal mistake in future years as well. It dawned on him then exactly what Naruto had done all these years. It was the ninja's greatest tool after all, deception. By dinner that night, Kakashi was capable enough to use his own hands to eat, though he had to be carried to the table. The meal was meager, but from what they saw of the village, it was probably the normal for this area. The only disturbance that came from the meal was from a small boy that had arrived not long before they sat down. Inari was Tsunami's son and seemed to be rather quiet, along with almost matching Mr. Moody with his brooding. It wasn't until halfway through dinner that the boy slammed his hands on the table and glared at the ninja. Then without a word he stood up and disappeared from the room. Is he mute? Kiba asked in general. A simple statement was enough to make Tsunami sob a little and cause Tazuna to glare at the table in front of him. Kiba, clearly finesse isn't your game, so you may want to tone it down while you are here. Tazuna-san, Tsunami-san, if you don't mind, would you explain the situation? Talking about it may help more than bottling it up. The adults searched the boy, wondering just where he was coming from, while Kiba was gritting his teeth. It was Tazuna who broke the silence first, telling them about the boy's past and how Gato had his father figure killed right in front of the whole village. He talked about how Gato was driving their economy into the ground while the man himself got fat off of the money they managed to scrounge together along with his own illegal dealings. Then he came to how the bridge he was building was possibly their last hope of ever getting out from under a tyrant's thumb. Throughout the entire explanation, Naruto was gripping the edge of the table tighter and tighter until his knuckles were white from the strain. When Tazuna's story ended, Tsunami was crying a bit into her hands while Tazuna himself had balled his hands into tight fists. If there were a way to get rid of Gato, our lives wouldn't have to be this way. I am starting to believe that if we do ever finish this bridge, he will just find another way to take money from us. All we can do is hope for the best and push forward. You should just realize when you have your betters around you and do as they demand. Smack! Sasuke didn't get to finish as an irate Naruto punched him into a wall. Tem, if I ever hear you say something like that again, I swear you won't live to see another sunrise. Sasuke was doing his best to glare at Naruto, but the effect was lessened drastically as he held his swelling jaw in pain. Kakashi-sensei, did you hear that? Naruto just made a threat on Sasuke-kun's life. That is against the laws of Konoha. Like a loyal dog, Sakura was at her master's defense immediately. Hi, it is Sakura. I will be sure to take it up with his Jonin-sensei when we get back, so don't worry. Naruto will get the proper punishment he deserves. Kakashi smiled at the girl as she turned to Naruto and gave him a smirk. To her surprise, Naruto smirked right back. Go ahead, Kakashi. I deserve it. I'll take any punishment my Jonin-sensei deems appropriate. Giving a small chuckle, he walked out of the house. It wasn't until a few minutes after the door was shut when Sakura realized what was said. But Kakashi-sensei, Naruto Baka doesn't have a Jonin-sensei. You say something, Sakura. Sakura's jaw hit the floor. Her own sensei wasn't going to defend her true love. She sat in stunned silence trying to think of what that meant. Technically, Kakashi had agreed to follow the right steps for discipline according to Konoha's laws, but said laws were never adjusted to allow for the possibility of a genin with no sensei in the ninja ranks. which meant the man that was trusted with their care had knowingly followed a loophole, essentially allowing Naruto to get away with hitting his own student without punishment. Looking over at Sasuke, she could see the registration with that same fact dawn in his eyes as he now glared at Kakashi. Well, I think we should turn in for the night. We'll be getting up early tomorrow and you will all need all the rest you can get now. In the morning I will tell you all a little secret I know and we'll begin some training exercises. With the help of Tazuna, Kakashi made his way to his room as his stunned and angry team split up into theirs. Completely forgetting that they were down by one member at the moment.